All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Excess Exceed. Gearface, have managed to conscript another expert to teach me about another character. I'm sitting down with Rose again today. Rose, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
Of course, of course. And I'm I understand that there is some controversy about how to pronounce this character's name, and
Uh,
we discussed it over text, but that actually is not super helpful in terms of pronouncing a name out loud. So I'm gonna let you go first.
oh
What
no, you're
character
putting me
what
under pressure.
what character are we going over today, Rose?
I'm gonna just go with this is Linne from Under Night.
All right, I'll take
Uh,
it. Linne from Under Night. Um, and as always on this show, we are talking about this game from a pretty um we're going to talk about it like we're experts here and like we know what we're talking about, both in terms of how the character's name is pronounced and how the character's game plan goes. If we are underrepresenting something that you think is important about the character, we would love to hear about it. I'm certainly not an expert. Rose is a much more informed opinion than I am, but even she has limitations to her knowledge, and we'd like to get a conversation started about this character whose name is Linne. Um, and second, we're going to be talking about playing to win on this show. However, Exceed is fun. You can play Exceed for fun. If what we're talking about or the way that we're pronouncing Linne's name doesn't sound fun to you, please play and or pronounce it in the way that you do find fun. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Disclaimer wise, Rose, tell me all about this character.
okay, so this is Linne from season 6 of Exceed, which is the Under Night expansion.
Mhm.
And she is possibly, well, I'm gonna be giving hot takes today, so I'll start with one. The most aggressive character in Exceed.
Wow.
Um,
Even like on the level of like Sea Viper, like we're talking that aggressive.
yes.
All right.
Because unlike Sea Viper, Linne is a Season 6 character, which has
Mm,
upsides and downsides. Season 6 characters, we usually kind of base our understanding of characters around the normal boosts. Season 6 characters have their own set of normals, which I am realizing right now I probably
sure.
should have
I'll grab.
available.
I'll grab him 1 second. Keep talking.
Sounds good.
Let's
But
grab
even
one.
though Sea Viper is a really incredibly aggressive character, the Season 1 through 5 normals are kind of a pretty vanilla normal set. They're what the game was designed around. They are. They give every character options to do certain aggressive things and certain defensive things. The Season 6 normals, take that out the window, they say, we want you in the normals to have aggression. And if your
Right.
character is more defensive, that'll be printed in your character's kit.
Okay.
And like Sea Viper's kit, Linne's kit is very much about aggression.
Okay.
So
So
they
so
both have that going.
she doesn't even have that to fall back on. She's got the set of boosts that are exclusive to season 6. If you're not familiar with season 6, we might go over these boosts. But she doesn't
Yep,
have light. She doesn't have fierce. Doesn't have defend. Doesn't
that's
have
pretty much all I was
parry.
going to say about them, to be honest. Because I figure we'll keep it focused on the character.
Sure,
But
sure,
yep,
sure.
she has, of the Season 6 normal boosts, you have one real continuous boost. This one is a continuous boost, but it's not really one.
It's kind of fake, but yes,
One
if you're
real continuous boost that sits in play for more than a turn.
okay.
Um, and instead, the trade-off for not having light, not having fierce, having just superior, is that you get things like tech hit, which is an insane amount of tempo.
Right.
You get veil off, which is a really, really strong gauge generation tool, just because of the mechanics of how Season 6 characters work.
Right.
In the worst case, this is twice of a key charge. In the
Yep.
best case, this is a key charge that exceeds you.
Yep.
So, okay. So, Linne, super aggressive character because, like the Season 6 normal boosts, she does not have herself continuous boosts that sit in play. Instead, this is kind of her defining characteristic. Every single continuous boost in her kit says now strike and hit gain advantage.
Right.
Every single one. So that's the start of the game plan. You're starting to get what the character's about. We're
Yeah.
going to strike and gain advantage as much as we can, as many
Kind
times as we can,
kind
until
of
the game ends.
kind of no matter what we do, we're either going to strike by striking or strike by boosting.
Yep.
Okay.
So what Linne is going for her, besides that, or what Linne is besides that, is she just has good economy, because advantage means you get to prep a lot. Her character ability lets you prep. She has some movement printed on her boosts, and the Season 6 boosts are quite good at movement.
Okay.
And she has really strong altars, which we'll get into later. So
Okay, so
that's who Linne is.
She's got a lot going for her, but in terms of how we're going to be playing her, it's going to be focused on keeping the tempo as high as humanly possible and taking as many turns as we can.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And this is where I go reference the thing from your disclaimer. As Linne, you have some tools to do more. Like, you can stand at range 2 and just say, all right, strike into me, I dare you.
Right.
And that's actually pretty effective for you. Mm-hmm. But we're going to leverage that into being aggressive. We're going to stop being aggressive at range 2 or something like that, rather than just forcing the opponent to make the first move.
So you do a bunch of things, take a bunch of turns in a row, hit them over and over again, and then end your combo at range 2 and say, hit me.
Yeah, that's
okay.
You don't always have to do that, but that is a very reliable thing to do.
Okay. And we might, as I notice them when we're talking about like defensive plays, I might call them out, because I do know a little bit about defensive Linne from talking to D. I know that Elusive Flash, for example, is very, very scary. But yeah, I'm curious to hear about sort of the. I don't consider myself particularly good at Exceed in general, but I'm definitely not good at aggressive play. So I might be asking some pretty basic questions about that throughout this lesson, but I'm super excited to learn about it.
And that is a good way to learn about it, because you don't have any other choice.
Right.
You do have to. The thing that might be difficult is you have to solve the puzzle of how am I aggressive right now, because I don't get to be aggressive later. It does have to be right now a lot of the time.
Okay.
And sometimes your hand really doesn't look suitable for that, and you still have to play the game even so.
Okay.
But you certainly can't take the easy way out. You can't say, okay, well maybe I just won't, because you might literally not have the ability to not.
To do it again later, or to opt out of it.
You might, every boost in your hand might say now strike. Right, and so if you want to boost, which you probably do, because this boosting is a lot of the game. Yeah.
And then you prep and get 2 more boosts in your hand that say now strike.
Yep, or you're already at 7 cards, and just all 7 of them say now strike. It's incredible. Linne hands are very funny. I can see why some people find them frustrating. To me, I find them very interesting. They're a good puzzle, and when I am still having trouble, I can at least be amused by, okay,
right,
I have to strike. Okay.
Right, there's no other choice. I mean, looking at the other characters that you've taught me so far, Dan and Enchantress especially are like, they're hand management puzzle characters, and I'm glad to see that Linne kind of fits that theme. So I'm interested to see about the way that particular kind of sub theme in your play, or the characters that you choose, manifests itself in Linne.
Yep, that makes sense. I hadn't even really thought about that, but now that you mention it, yeah, that is. Rather than Dan, like Enchantress, you are trying to solve the puzzle, or I guess. As Linne, the puzzle is you're going to draw cards. You get into a situation where your hand is full of cards and you're not sure how to make them useful, and you have to find out how to change the situation to make them useful.
Okay, that's a good sort of mindset to keep in mind while we're going through the kit then, and I'm sure I'll try to find places to clarify that, or to ask questions about that as we go.
Yep. So
where do we
start? We talked about who Linne. Now is where I try to sell you on why Linne. Mm-hmm. This character is good. This is the first hot take of the session. This is an above average character in this game.
Okay.
People will disagree with that, but some people won't disagree with that, because opinions are more varied than they were on sight read. Everyone read this character and thought this character was bad.
Right.
But with the benefit of experience, above average character.
Okay.
You have really good ultras. These are probably underpriced by the standards of characters that don't have as much access to gauge as Season 6. And Season 6 has an incredible amount of access to gauge, so they're doubly underpriced.
Right, okay.
And you have really strong UAs, or character abilities. And I'm going to kind of go down the table to over here where I have some cards laid out to talk about them. You have...
Oh, there we are. Sorry about that.
Yes. You have your front side ability, which in the past I have been a little down on, but let's just talk about it as what it is in a vacuum.
Okay.
You draw 2, then you move, then the opponent draws 1, and then you draw 1 for end of turn. So there's a couple of steps. But for right at the start, let's just cancel out the draw 1 and draw 1. I'll get back to that later, but to make it simpler, you draw 1, then you move 1, then you draw for end of turn.
Okay.
That's comparable to like Ryu's Exceed side or Ken's front side, except as Ryu, you move first and then you draw, so you don't get to use that to inform your decision. And as Ken, you don't even get a choice. You just move.
You only close.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. So as Linne, you get to see 2 cards worth of information and then move, and then you get 1 card that you aren't aware of. But that's a lot of ability to position yourself in a way that works with your hand.
Right. So when you're talking about a big part of Linne play is that hand management mini game. This is a tool to help solve that. If I can see what's coming into my hand and say, okay, well, these 2 things are both great at range 3, I better get there. I can sort of activate my hand by using this character ability while also reloading, because it's kind of analogous to a super prep.
Yep. And that's why we'll get to... So that is the value of this ability. Also, some abilities like this, like close a retreat. This one is a full advance retreat, so you can use it to get out of the corner, which is always nice.
Yep.
But yes, so that's why this ability is good. This ability is a reload. It gives you control of your positioning. I will talk about the minor problem I have with this ability, which is that your opponent draws a card, and then they get to use it before you do. So
sure.
It's a... Yeah.
This is like the one. I mean, to having glanced over the kit up here, this is like the one time when you're using this ability that you're not going to be gaining advantage. So
yes.
you actually really are passing your turn to your opponent, and they have a resource on top to leverage against you. Okay.
And what I find is a pattern that you kind of get into on Linne to stop your opponent from stopping your advantage. Is you strike a bunch, the opponent has to deal with it, and then both of you are at low resources. So you might both take a couple turns to prep or something, and it's not the worst situation for you because the opponent can't afford to take their turns setting up defenses. They need to prep because they've exhausted their hand.
Right. And, and you're helping them do it.
Yes. I have, over time, I guess I've come to the conclusion, if you're going to prep anyway, this isn't worse, necessarily, than just taking more turns to do what you want to do. Because if they get the time... If you use this twice versus prep 3 times, the opponent draws the same amount of cards if they are also prepping.
Okay.
So it's a strong ability. It's good. And...
So would you say that because there is kind of an analogy to prep sort of built in here that we're talking about, would you say that most of the time this replaces the prep for Linne, or are there times when you specifically don't want to give your opponent resources that you would be okay with taking that 3rd turn?
Right now, my play, this replaces a small move action. If I want to prep, I will just prep, but this movement is not optional. And I think it's a lot of the value of the ability is that this is better than prep, again, because rather than you getting 3 force and the opponent gets 1 force, you also move, so you get 4 force and the opponent gets 1 force.
Okay.
So I think that's what you're looking for, is if you are going to take a small move action, this is better than doing that.
Okay, but prep does still have a utility in not giving your opponent a resource edge on their turn.
Yep, and of course, it's like not moving out of a favorable position.
Oh, sure, yeah. If we're talking about you just want to stand at range 2 and strike, you can't use your ability and do that unless you're not standing at range 2.
Yep.
Okay.
And now we're going to get to the elephant room. This is why I have less confidence in my description of the front side ability than I might. The Succeed ability is really strong, and I'm about to sell you on that, but you will not have access to the front side ability for a lot of the game because you'll be exceeded.
Yep.
Season 6 character, you do have access to the front side ability. That's the first thing that makes the Exceed ability strong. If you ever do really need to be on front side, again, you can.
Right.
It doesn't even cost an action.
Yeah, you can.
But you won't want to leave Exceed mode.
Okay. And so is the play pattern kind of get into Exceed mode, use the benefits that you're about to sell me on in Exceed mode, and then when you need to, you revert to reload?
I tend not to because I don't want to have to get back into Exceed mode. What I will revert from Exceed mode to do is if I need one more gauge right now. And then if since I've reverted anyway, because I'm reverted, I might as well use the benefits of front side.
Might as well reload until you have the opportunity to find a way to get back into Exceed mode somehow.
Yep.
Okay.
So here's why I'm going to say the Succeed mode is really strong. This is the hardest part of the Succeed mode to remember. Not only do you get to play a boost from your gauge, it gives you +1 power if you strike with it. And +1 power now strike is deceptively strong as an ability.
Mm.
We're all used to Fierce because Fierce is kind of... Well, those of us who started in older sets are used to Fierce. And Fierce is really scary. But it turns out that 1 power hits most of the same breakpoints that 2 power hits. If your opponent has Defend or a similar boost in play, they have 4 effective guard. So +1 power makes your assault break that. If someone is at range 1 and they want to just defend, you usually don't have to think about defending with sweep. And Fierce ruins that, but +1 power also makes sweep not safe to defend with.
Right. The thing that I've heard about power boosts in Exceed is that like +3 is like astronomically better than +2, but +2 is not like that like mind-breakingly better than +1. Is that accurate?
That is true. This is something that will come up with Season 7 characters because they also have access to smaller plus power than Fierce. You will find that Focus becomes more relatively important because Focus or Sweep are both really good cards. 7 effective defenses. It was always notably more than 6, but in the world where you have +1 power boost instead of +2 power boosts, it's really notably more than 6.
Okay.
Because if you can't break Focus with a sweep in this ability.
And +1 power, right. And just taking a super quick look over these, I'm just looking for there's a +1 power there. That's so she's got one more power boost in her kit, and I guess she's got superior. So I mean, like if we're working real hard, we can reach +2 power somehow. But it's definitely
That's
not
3 with superior. Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely not as trivial as it would be with 2 copies of Fierce in your deck just hanging out.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, Focus is a card you are probably going to trade with. Well, I wouldn't do good enough. Focus is a card that you are probably not going to stun. And that's fine, you're just going to have to kind of deal with that. You have ways to not trade with it even if you don't stun it.
Yep. A lot of characters have trouble with Focus. It's a lot of good characters have trouble with Focus. Like it's not necessarily a game-breaking thing.
Yep. So that's the first bit of why this ability is better than it looks. This is deceptively strong. This is easy to forget, too, so you might read this character and not even remember that she has the +1 power, so in 2 ways, it's the value that's kind of hidden.
Right.
But, so, you're getting that +1 power, that's great. You are playing continuous boost from your gauge. That's the second half of this, because all of your character boosts say, now strike, hit, gain advantage.
Right, so you'll usually be getting that power and whatever else you're getting.
Yes, so that's why I'm pulling out these 2 comparisons.
Okay.
Soul, you play a boost. You're a Season 7 character, so your boosts are lower impact than Season 1 through 5. Kind of like Linne's and Season 6 boosts.
Right.
You play a slightly lower impact boost, you cancel it, so you get to take another action, which, because you're Soul, you'll strike.
You'll strike.
And you get +1 power.
And the cancel comes from gauge, so there's still a gauge component there too. So there's similarities there too.
Yep.
Okay.
So these are quite similar abilities. The thing is, as Linne, all of your boosts will also give you advantage. As Soul, all of your boosts will probably also give you even more power.
Right.
So the differences are, like, Soul will kill you in more interactions. Soul will not just advantage chain you.
Right.
But Soul will also get a lot more value out of any individual interaction. But
sure.
In a vacuum, certain similarities to abilities. And then Happy Chaos, you are spending a force from hand, which is not the same as a gauge, but kind of similar. And you're getting +1 power and advantage, and you're doing this on any strike you want to, basically.
Right.
This is better than Linne's ability because you can use it on defense. That's really interesting because getting defensive advantage can sometimes be very powerful.
Right, to steal it back from an assault or something.
Yep.
Right.
But again, just kind of all of your attacks have +1 power and advantage in the world where you are hitting attacks and can keep doing this.
Right. And the rest of the value of this ability is going to depend on the strength of her continuous boost kit, which, I mean, if it was, just looking at the normal boosts in season 6, there's some decent continuous boost in there, but it's not quite as incredible a kit as
Yes,
as season 1 through 5, but those wouldn't cause
the power in
strike.
season 6 boosts are not necessarily the continuous boosts.
Yeah, and so that means that we're going to have to be looking at her special kit, which we'll get into in a second.
Yep. Linne with access to Fierce and Light would be a very, very scary character.
That'd be pretty devastating. So before we get over to the sort of the rest of the kit, just for some bookkeeping, for people who have not played season 6 before, these all read action, play a continuous boost from your gauge, if it causes you to strike. So this is done on your turn, and it cannot, you can't do this while you're also reading somebody or tech hitting somebody. Like this is the action that you're taking on your turn. It's not something that you can do in conjunction with another boost or anything like that.
Yes, that is something to keep in mind. Linne has this problem, or not problem. Lenny has this particularity less than other season 6 characters because her action itself plays a continuous boost. So,
sure,
you don't. Yeah, you do have some funkiness with like, I'd love to gain advantage this turn, so I need to. Because your ability is printed on your continuous boost, it's more obvious that it doesn't synergize with other continuous boosts that don't have your ability printed on them. In my mind,
that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, and just having done a couple of guides on season 6, I know that it is a less popular season, so it sometimes comes up, but that's a fair point.
Yeah, Linne is, in my opinion, one of the characters in season 6 that makes the best use out of the thing season 6 that's going on, because both of her abilities don't have that conflict we're talking about. This one doesn't cause a strike. This is just an action you can take. Like, there have been those before and after. This one can't really conflict with a boost, and this one is boosting, which also, so that's one thing.
Which also doesn't conflict with a boost, sure.
And the other thing she has going on is she actually quite likes, in a way that probably makes her less inherently powerful than season 1 through 5 boosts, she has interesting options with season 6 boosts because she gets to play boosts from her gauge, which means she gets to strike with a card and then also boost it.
Right.
So this is the one that's kind of like something she would do in the older seasons. You strike with cross and then you boost stats. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is one of the best continuous boosts in the season. This is a really safe normal, right? Like, you just range 2, you're getting 3 damage. You're Linne, so you're probably getting advantage. It's very easy as Linne to just strike with cross and say, great, now I have superior in my gauge.
And the opportunity cost of playing superior typically is that you don't get cross. And Linne doesn't,
and vice versa.
Actually, vice versa too. Cross, notably good card. Linne doesn't really have that problem. She can, as long as she's striking it with it first, she can do both.
Yep. So let's look at the boost that actually does matter for that in season 6. There are 3, and you like all of them. Just Defense, pretty situational boost for a lot of characters. When you are boosting it from gauge and not boosting it instead of playing the card Sweep, this is actually quite a strong boost.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the opportunity cost, like in previous, not to keep talking about previous seasons, but in season 1 through 5, the big opportunity cost of Sweep is Light. And I remember people joking that, like, season 6 has the most playable copies of Sweep in the game because they have Just Defense on it instead, which is kind of more underwhelming. But +3 armor, now strike on a mid-speed or slow attack is pretty cool.
Yep.
Okay. So you hit with Sweep. You want to hit with Sweep anyway.
Yep. Sweep is one of your favorite cards to strike with, even, I would go so far as to say. Well,
sure.
I know you think that's really unique to Linne, but,
Sure.
yeah. But Just Defense is a very good boost for you, shockingly, because No, opportunity cost of 1 gauge when you make a lot of gauge is real because Linne quite likes gauge, but it's a lot lower than the opportunity cost of not playing the card sweep.
Yep. And also, like, +3 armor, now strike. Well, wait, that's a now strike boost. Just
Yep,
because
so you also get 1 power,
yeah,
just to sweeten it a little
just
bit.
because it's not a special boost, I still get this because it is a continuous boost. It works with my normal boosts too. Plus 3 power, +1 armor, now strike, having already hit with
Or
sweep.
vice versa.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Yeah, seems pretty good to me.
Yep. And then this other one is Grasp. This one is cool. This is the type of thing that you would not get at all in season 1 through 5 out of Linne's ability. You get to hold this mobility boost in your gauge and use it later, which because this is a continuous boost, even though a lot of times it acts a lot like an instant boost.
Right.
So hit with Grasp, and now anytime in the future you want to go in, you can respect.
Okay. And this is one of the few that doesn't cause a strike. So if you're in the situation where you really don't want to be striking into your opponent, as you mentioned, playing that hand mini game, this could be a way to actually establish defense if you absolutely need it.
Yep.
Okay.
And then other two things that Linne likes a lot about, well, other two things that Linne particularly cares about in season 6 are these two. Veil Off helps this game plan that we'll kind of keep talking about of get into Exceed mode and do the Exceed mode stuff. But you like Gauge a lot. You have great ultras. If you had to actually make the choice between spending a Gauge to get into Exceed mode so like if you had to make the choice between Exceed mode and ultras, that would be a very hard choice for you to make.
Right.
This card lets you just choose both.
Right. At the cost of not playing a focus. And focus is good.
Yes, Focus is good. Focus is arguably one of the best. It's not arguably one of. It's arguably the best normal. It's definitely one of the best normals.
Right. Is this ability to both exceed and play her good ultras worth consistently sacrificing focus, or is that a decision that I have to make on a case by case basis?
Shades of both. Some characters really care about you having focus. Like Kokonoe is an example that comes to mind because Kokonoe, her whole gimmick. Well, that's a little unfair to Kokonoe. Something Kokonoe really likes is moving you around during her strikes.
Right.
And focus is a very good counter to her setups.
Okay. So if your opponent lets you get away with it, veil off as much as you can. If it's a matchup that you kind of need to marshal your focuses for, then you have to do that, but you're not happy about it.
You have to make a tough choice. You might still veil off. The veil off is really good.
Okay.
You have to think about it more.
Okay.
Because the thing that Focus is very good about is Focus is a pretty good defensive tool. Linne actually has a decent set of defensive tools. That might be a hot take, I'm not sure. But I think you can get away with getting rid of Focus much easier than some characters can.
Okay.
So I would lean towards veiling off. If I can't find a good reason to not veil off, I'll veil off. If I can find a good reason, I'll think about it and I'll maybe still veil off, but maybe I'll
still veil off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then here's Tech Hit. Tech Hit is interesting because Tech Hit is another boost that has your, let's call it a weakness because it kind of is. You can't just play this and pass. You have to strike.
Right.
Staple to it. And that is why Tech Hit and Tech are side grades of each other.
Right.
Because sometimes you really don't want to strike. You just want to get rid of a boost and then see what happens next. So this is as Tech Hit, on the upside of Tech Hit, this is a very powerful effect. Like Season 7 kind of tries to split the difference and has a cancelable tech. But if you want just the tech side of that, that's fine. You can just have the tech side of it. If you want the Tech Hit side of that, that costs you a gauge.
Right, and this one doesn't. At the cost of not being able to choose.
Yes.
Right.
So this card is going to be pretty important for you, which is a little unfortunate because you can't strike with this card. So when it's sitting in your hand, well, on your turn, you cannot strike with this card. When it's sitting in your hand, it's not giving you options for ways to do aggression if the opponent doesn't have a boost out.
Oh,
so it contributes to some of your awkward hands where, like, I'd love to do something, but I can't strike with these two blocks. On the other hand, you can't get rid of them necessarily because you might really want Tech Hit later.
Right. So you can't just empty block for the gauge necessarily because Tech Hit is still a very powerful ability.
Yep.
Okay.
I would probably change cards before empty striking with block, just because you have to have something better to do than that as Linne.
Okay.
Hopefully,
Okay.
yes. But yeah. So like you're over here on the center table again. You're Linne. You're having a great time, dancing around, playing strikes of advantage. Ryu is also walking around because both of you have this movement ability.
Yep.
And then Ryu, you're at range two. Two's probably a good range. Ryu just drops this on the table.
Right.
You can't. So your choices here are ignore this. If you do, Ryu will hit you. It will hurt.
Yep.
Strike into this. If you do, probably Ryu will hit you. It will hurt.
Yep.
Play a boost that isn't tech hit, which does possibly change things. Like maybe Ryu is out of really high, or it's Ryu, so he's not out of high damage cards. Maybe Ryu's out of ranged options, and you're at range 3, so you retreat one on strike, and maybe now you don't die. But
but
you have to find something. You have to find a really specific situation to get out of this by striking.
And even then, it's a gamble most of the time.
Yes.
Right.
So this is what you need tech hit for. Tech hit is your way out of the situation. It is your best way out of the situation. Your second best way out of the situation is probably just accepting you lose the next strike, because it's a very hard situation for you. So that's why you like tech hit.
Okay.
And if you had tech, you could just tech it. And that would be cool, and you'd go back to the way things were. But you're playing this for you, who has a boost kit of like, I don't know how many good continuous boosts. The tempo does matter. Tech hit is a very strong card. If you do have tech hit, you'd love to tech hit this and just keep striking.
Right.
So, yeah. I don't remember. Did I start talking about? Are we talking about why you play Linne or Lenny's game plan? Because they kind of muddle into each other.
You were talking about both. I think at this point we've moved on into the game plan part of things. But if you've got anything else about on the sales pitch,
yes, one last thing.
Yeah.
Advantage. Advantage is a really strong mechanic. Exceed characters with advantage tend to get a lot of value out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Linne has. I'm not gonna say the most, because like Reese and Noelle maybe more than Noelle, but like it's arguable. Like Reese or Lychee or someone might have more advantage than her.
Right, but not many characters, and those characters are quite strong that you're describing.
Like I'm saying, Noelle definitely has fewer advantage, and Noelle is like the face of advantage.
Yeah,
because she is well known and
definitely
gets to take 4 turns in a row every time she exceeds.
Definitely.
So, game plan. You prep when you need to draw cards, and I'm counting the front side ability in that.
Mm-hmm.
And you strike, and I'm counting almost every boost in your kit into that.
Right.
Sometimes you boost superior. This is your set play. Is you on an empty board, you're at a nice range, you boost superior. That is the entirety of the set play you have available to you.
Okay. Everything else is just set up to strike immediately.
Yep.
Okay.
Sometimes you boost Veil Off, because we talked about Veil Off being good.
Yep.
Sometimes you boost Respect or Air Dash, because you'd like some mobility.
Yep.
That's
specifically mobility that moves you farther than the one that you have on your character ability. If you need kind of bulk movement, that's your option. Otherwise, you can do it for free with your ability.
Yep, and you have boosts as well that give you short mobility. So you have character boosts, that is, like give you short distance mobility.
Right.
If you need long distance mobility, these are what you're in for.
Okay.
Or you can just take the move action, like is better than being zoned out if you have to make that choice. But you are a Season 6 character, and Season 6 characters are good against zoning.
Yep.
You are a Season 6 character that gets to play Grasp and Respect, so you're even better against zoning than most, because it's just slightly more access to Respect.
Yep.
So you probably, if you're getting zoned, have something to do about that. So yeah, you prep, you strike, you boost your couple of good boosts that don't cause strikes. And sometimes you change cards, because that is one of your ways out of this awkward hand situation where you have cards in hand, but you don't have useful cards in hand.
Right.
You just get new cards in hand.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, you can't slow down because you run out of things to do. You do like this very limited amount of set play you have access to. If you have Superior and you're in a good board state, absolutely boost Superior and tell your opponent that you're going to strike with 2 boosts on your next turn.
Right.
But That's it. That's all. You can't slow down because you just don't have the option to.
Right. And then at some
Um,
point during this game plan, you exceed.
yes, I
If you
like doing it aggressively early, but there's not that big of a rush because your gauge will be there, and you can spend as much of it as you want, as quickly as you want, as long as you keep hitting.
right, and one I guess one consideration, like I mean, like so, all right, I hear, I want to exceed early. I see that Veil Off lets me exceed right away. I play it right away, except that I need other things in my gauge to be able to play as continuous boosts. So I'm kind of also
Yes.
stacking my gauge with things that I need to play later. And
And this is why I say that I personally exceed aggressively early. I will veil off with nothing in my gauge. I
wow,
don't know if that's right.
okay,
But the reason it is an interesting question is you have really good ultras, and your best ultra costs 1 gauge.
oh
It's
sure,
not. It's like it's not a force special or an ultra. It's a gauge special.
right,
It's gauge neutral to hit this card.
right,
And then because you are a season 6 character, if you want to, you can flip and play Diviner. Just like get 2 gauge out of your veil off.
right,
And because Divine Blaze has the text on it, if this is the turn after a strike and you have just Veil off in your gauge, you take a successful strike with advantage. Now you have 2 cards in your gauge. Okay, flip back Divine Blaze.
right. You revert with the exceed, with the revert action, you get another gauge, and then you divine blaze. Okay, so if the only consideration was using your character ability on exceed side, you need to stack your gauge first, but you're still building gauge when you're exceeded, and you might just be doing it. You might just be getting gauge to play ultras, and Veil Off does
Yep.
that too. Okay,
So I could see an argument that you want like 1 or 2 boosts in gauge before veiling off. I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to be more patient than that. Like obviously you might just not draw focus, and actually spending a gauge to exceed is a much harder choice.
right. And if
Um,
you're not specifically trying to go for an ultra by playing Veil Off, maybe do wait until you have
yeah, like if
some.
you have no altars in hand,
Okay.
and you might as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's flexible for sure.
Okay.
I don't think there's a wrong answer except to die with a full gauge and not having spent it.
Right. That makes sense. So you're exceeding fairly early, and then you're doing all of the things that you've said. You're prepping, you're striking, you're reverting if you need to play an ultra, and reload while you're there.
Yep.
Okay. That makes sense.
So yeah, that'll be the 3 limiting factors on your game plan. The first one: do I have cards in hand to do anything? If not, well, you can't do anything. That
Right.
one's pretty easy.
Right.
Do I have gauge to do anything? If not, well, you can't do the cool things, but you can still strike and gain advantage and get gauge, so that's fine.
Right.
And the third one is the tricky one. Do I have useful cards in hand to do things? And that's where the skill is.
Okay.
How do I make this into a useful hand?
Right. And because you will frequently have a lot of cards in hand because of Linne's character ability, or things engage that you've put engage and you're on exceed side. So you'll have options most of the time, but will they be
But
what you
sometimes
need?
your hand, yeah,
Yeah.
like exceed cards are good at different ranges. You can have a hand that's good at range 4 when you're at range 1, or
Totally.
vice versa.
Yep.
You
Okay.
can have a hand of niche cards that would be good, like 1 tech hit in your hand, amazing. 1 diviner in your hand, a nice option to have.
Right.
Divine Blaze in your hand, great option to have. 2 blocks, 2 diviners, 2 divine blazes, and 0 gauge. That's not a good hand.
Yeah, that's a change cards or something, that or a change the situation. Find a way to veil off and get and revert and get some gauge quickly or something.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And because as Linne, you can just, if you are playing good enough cards to connect them while you're striking, you get another opportunity to play a good card to connect with by striking. So you have an easy time going from a situation where you have a bunch of useful cards in hand to I have all the cards that I didn't want to use in hand, and it's been my turn, and it's still my turn.
Right.
So now what?
Right. So I guess like the ideal situation is you have several cards in your hand that you could use if you had a couple more gauge, and then the ability to get that gauge while chaining advantage until you have the gauge to play the cards that you want or something. Like
Yep.
you have a
Yep.
mix of various things that let you uh, combo everything together in a way that is uh, effective, but also internally satisfying.
Yep.
Okay.
So that is kind of the overview of the game plan, and then to talk in more depth, we can talk about like how do you build this game plan out of the cards that the fixed deck has given you.
Sure.
So going back down to the table where we have tier list time. Um, on the left are, I'm going to go right from left because on the right are the cards that you are playing Linne because you want to play.
Okay.
And on the left are the cards that you'll notice that the 3 lowest cards are just like 3 completely acceptable normals.
Yeah, I mean,
So there's a pretty low bar, like
okay,
a high floor.
These are solid cards.
Yeah. So context of your specials, because your specials are going to be this is one of the hot takes. I'm saying Skyfangs is as a card in its totality, not the attack Skyfangs, is at the same tier as like Sweep and Focus, and that is a very hot take.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's talk about the context behind that. We did talk about this +1 power breakpoint thing, but
right.
And all the Linne specials look a little low impact. Like this is a pretty normal DP shape. Like compare this to Ryu DP, I guess.
Right.
That one is 4 power. It closes you 1. It's at speed 7 on the opponent's turn.
Right.
This is 3 power. It advances you 2, which is very similar to closing you 1, and it's 7 speed on the opponent's turn.
Right.
So 3 is less than 4. That matters a reasonable amount, not a ton, because both of them just happen to dodge Spike anyway.
Right.
Or not Spike. Well, okay. It does matter, but it doesn't matter in like an obvious breakpoint way. It just matters in terms of, 4 damage is nice.
4 is more than 3.
Yep. And it's actually cheaper than Reuse, which is cool, again. So this is a pretty good DP, but it's not Ragna's, I'm at range 2, I'm going to hit you for like 6 damage and heal health DP.
Right. And just before we continue to make sure, because you mentioned this briefly with Skyfangs, these are not strike tier list, it's card tier list. So
when we're cards in their entirety.
Yeah, so block being up here is because of tech hit, focus being up here is because of both focus, but mostly veil off. Sweep is sweep. But Skyfangs, both sides of it together, deserves to be in this column.
Yes.
Okay.
So, because, Linne specials look a little low impact, but every Linne special you land gets you exceptionally aggressively price boost into your gauge.
Right.
So let's talk about Skyfangs. Because Skyfangs is a bit of a meme in the community. It has been at points in the past. This card is also actually just better than it looks. But notably, this is a projectile that will trade with other projectiles. It has 3 effective defenses. They're armor instead of guard, so the trades are really interesting. Like if you have a 3 power projectile coming in, you trade with it, by which I mean they hit you and deal 0 damage, and then you hit them back.
Right.
If you have a 4 power projectile coming in, this card doesn't do anything, and because you're Linne, you don't have boost to change that.
Okay.
Because you're defending with this probably, and your boosts are not in play on their turn.
Right.
So this card is really matchup dependent. If someone has a projectile with 4 power, this card is not going to be a good answer to it. If they have projectiles with less than 4 power, this card is much better than it looks.
Right, it's pretty good. Is this a situation where you might be leveraging Superior, or do you have better places to use that?
I have done it. You have better places as well, though.
Okay.
So it's not ideal. You might try to naturally EX this. That would be a thing to do. And that also has the element of surprise, right? If you have Superior on the field, they know that they can't beat Skyfangs.
Right. And I was about to ask about, well, doesn't that deprive you of the ability to use the boost later? But it's Linne. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. This card is weak, a little weak. Not as weak as it looks, a little weak. This card is a little weak. This card is a little weak.
Right.
All of them give you, this is quick step, then strike, then gain advantage, also gain 1 power.
And probably
there's a lot of things tied into this boost.
To a 0 cost special boost.
Yep, this is 2 power, now strike. There's a really scary Ragna boost right here.
Yep.
This is an ultra boost. Yep. When you see Ragna play this, you're like, okay, I'm in for a beating.
Yep.
This one requires you to be at range 1. This one pushes you, which is minor upside. Ragna does like corner carrying you, but 2 power is really nice to have at range 1. At range 3, it's like crossing out is a really very real threat.
Yep.
So Ragna's pretty positioning dependent on when he can play this boost. You just have this as a special boost that gains you advantage.
Right.
As long as you hit Sky Fangs.
Right. Or
with no conditions, yes, on when you play it.
Right.
Yeah. No positioning constraints.
Yeah. And if you don't you know, I guess the other thing to think about that I didn't even ask yet, how frequently are you playing your special boosts raw without putting them in gauge first?
Whenever the opportunity presents itself, if you don't have a better play, you'd much rather strike and get advantage, even if you're not getting +1 power.
Okay, so
than strike and not get advantage.
So you might not. So ideally, you hit with Sky Fangs and then you pull this out of your gauge to get +2 power. Now strike gain advantage.
Ideally, yep.
But sometimes
the same thing we were talking about here. 1 power is quite good.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. So if you can't hit with Sky Fangs for whatever reason and you just need to play it raw, that's absolutely an option. It's just maybe slightly less impactful.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a low bar, a high floor. I need to practice those idioms. A high floor on your special boost because all of them do an effect. This one has a situational effect. This one has a situational effect. The rest of them do just like generally good effects, and also now strike and gain advantage.
Okay.
So you can just play them. You should just play them because getting advantage is strong, and you want it. You'd rather if you strike without gaining advantage as Linne, something weird is going on. Like I'm maybe assuming you're playing Assault and you don't care that I know that.
Right. Because everything else involves gaining advantage or failing to gain advantage, or you've run out of resources to gain advantage.
Yep.
Okay. So this is a projectile answer. It pulls you in, or rather, it closes you in. Trades poorly with things slower than it, but either way, you put a great boost in your gauge, so maybe you don't care that much.
Yep. And one last thing, though, this case doesn't tend to put a great boost in your gauge. This is a very stable card to defend with at range 3. It does not win that many interactions. It does notably beat Spike, which is cool because it has free armor. That's why it is stable. You're never going to lose by much. You might win by 3. They might dive you and you lose by 2. They might assault you and you lose by 1.
You lose by 1, sure.
So this is where we start getting into like Focus is a great card. Everyone likes Focus. As Linne, you have other defensive options. This one does not. Like there are characters out there with title whirls that just say you can't strike into me at range 3 very easily.
Right.
Linne doesn't say that. Linne does say if you strike into me at range 3, you might not get very much out of it.
Right. Even with the title whirl.
Yeah, this actually beats the title whirl probably because those title whirls just push.
All right, and they don't do that much damage.
Yep.
Okay. So more use cases than it might look puts a good boost in your gauge, but even if you don't put the good boost in your gauge, you might still be able to find a use for it.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
That is leave a pin in that. There is a single Linne card that will get stuck in a single Linne character card that will get stuck in your hand easily. The rest of them you will have a use for.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, this is a pretty bad mid speed. It's bad is strong. This is a weak mid speed.
Okay.
This is it's not SPD. You're at range 1, you play this into their sweep or focus, you're going to trade. You'll trade up, probably.
Right.
And this scales very well with boosts.
Yeah, so 4 armor, but every boost you get is giving you sort of double the delta if it's a power boost.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, this is no just win the strike mid speed. This is do some work to have a really good strike mid speed.
Okay.
But yeah. So again, a little low impact, but then it puts it's not unplayably low impact. It's just a little weaker, and then it puts a premium boost into your gauge. This one is at range 4. This is a dive like. At range 1, this is a pretty funky mid speed. And like funky in that it beats focus but not sweep.
Yeah. So you're you don't really have an answer to sweep. A lot of times when characters have 2 mid speeds, it's like one of them beats focus, one of them beats sweep.
And you kind of have that because this one's better against sweep than it is against focus.
Right.
Let's say you have +1 power on this because you're Linne, and you probably do.
Right.
This trades 5-1 into sweep. This trades 1-1 into, or 3-1 into focus.
Right.
And your other answer to sweep is your own sweep with +1 power.
Right. That makes sense. Oh, it didn't occur to me. It's not
Mhm.
X armor where X equals power. It's X armor where X equals damage.
Yes, that's
so,
a pretty notable distinction because
Yeah, so-
Wagner has a boost which is X armor where X equals power, and that boost basically says if she hits you, she wins the strike.
Yeah, for sure. And so focus is actually stronger into Tenacious Mist and Sweep is because of that. That makes sense. I just had to catch up with you there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good call up because this card has some weird interactions. That's one of them.
Okay. And
so
are you planning to go over the boosts themselves in more detail in a
second?
second?
I just I just want to give context. This is why the Linne specials, despite looking a little low impact, are better than they look. Let's actually talk about the cards.
Sure. Yeah. No. Take your time.
I was just saying that was the forward. Now let's go from right to left, and we'll actually talk about them a little more.
Gotcha.
When we hit them.
Cool.
So this card is the best card in your kit.
Yep.
This card at range 2 just wins a strike most of the time.
Yep.
For 4 power, that's pretty respectable.
Yep.
It has,
as you mentioned, it's you called it a gauge special.
Yes, this is super cheap.
Yeah, for 1 gauge, win a strike at range 2 is pretty great.
Yep. And so caveats on that. In the normals, there's one card that beats this, Assault.
Assault, right.
There's one card that, they cross out and you didn't get hit, but you spent a gauge.
Right.
Everything else is beats.
Yep.
And a lot of characters, that remains true when you add their specials in. You look at this card, and it still beats everything but Assault and Cross.
Right.
But that is not true for some characters. We'll take the most extreme example I could think of over here. Hey, Vega.
Hi, Vega. Yeah.
Close 2.
So
Advanced Hospital, close 1. Close 3, close 2. Close 5.
Yeah.
Close 3. These all hit at range 1. This one might not hit at range 1, and this is a really good card to beat, to be fair. Right. But are you really going to play Elusive Flash when it could be any of these 7 cards?
Right. It would require a pretty incredible read to make that happen. So characters who have a lot of mobility in their kit, specifically at range 2, are going to have answers to that.
To hit you at range 1 when they started the turn at range 2 at speed greater than 4.
Right.
So speed greater than 4, I guess, is not required if they don't get stunned.
Right. But... So you're also, I guess, you're also limiting your loss cases to things that if all those things are true, unless it's an ultra, you're probably not being hit very hard. So even when Elusive Flash does lose combat, it might not be to something horrible.
Yep. Though the fact that you lost combos with Elusive Flash is already a punishment enough. If you
right, very true. You're hoping to win cleanly for 4, and you whiff completely or something is pretty bad. It sounds like you are playing this on offense most of the time because most of Linne's stuff is on offense.
That I think is one of the places where there's room for different playstyles in Linne. This is again in the normals on defense. This doesn't beat dive, but are you really diving someone at range 2 where you yourself will miss?
Right. Yeah,
and unless there are more character specials at speed 4.
Right, unless you're Cammy or something. But yeah, so I guess the other side of this is that you're advocating for playing this as part of your range 2 offensive mix-up, chaining advantage together over and over again, and this is just part of that. The other way to do it is that this is a stable range 2 defensive card that is actually part of a mix-up with other range 2 defensive cards that you might have. You could. We're
in fact about to get to the second one.
Exactly.
These are
you have a DP.
You have great 2 range 2 defensive options. This is one of them, and the other one is the DP.
Right.
So there's room to use this card in either direction. I am against characters that are not Vega or less extreme, but similar. I'm counting how many assaults you have left. If you have no assaults left, I will absolutely collect my 4 free damage.
Yeah.
But it's always the fact any attack that says attacks at range X do not hit you is going to be a really threatening call-out option.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, even if you just holding it over your opponent's head and making them guess either on offense or on defense is very scary.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's why that's your best card. It also has Probably. Well, I won't go that far. One of your better boosts on it,
Okay.
because this is the Fend now strike hit gain advantage. The Fend is just a boost that's already quite good on its
Yeah,
own.
and also the +1 power on top of it many times.
Yep. Yeah. So if you can hit it, even better,
Right.
because you get that as well.
So
So yeah, this
any
card will never be stuck in your hand. This
right.
card will just be itching for ways to use it,
Any
and you'll have to choose which one.
any particular cards that Sheer Wall works well on? I'm assuming it would be things like Assault out of position or I guess Tenacious Mist.
This Nature's Mist is a decent one, right? Like the thing is, you lose to Grasp and Cross anyway. But for against character cards, yes, this could be quite helpful. So it depends on the matchup.
Right.
The other good one is Flying Swallow at range 1.
Okay.
Because now you don't lose to Cross, you actually trade up against Cross quite heavily.
Right.
You do lose to Grasp, but okay, whatever. And again, against character cards, you might win cleanly.
Right. So
win.
Honestly, just like it is for defend, it would be for things like mid speeds, making mid speeds safer, but not having to sacrifice tempo to do it and giving them more power too is a lot.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah. The one thing that I will say about the difference in the Fend is like you were thinking of the Fend presumably and you were like Assault at a safe range. The Linne doesn't like Assault very much because what are you getting out of Assault you didn't get out of any other card after you boosted this?
Right, like this is, as you mentioned, this is if you play a card without gaining advantage first, you're assuming it's Assault anyway.
Yeah, so like if you were going to play this and play an Undercurve Assault, why not just play this and play Sweep and gain advantage and also have swept them instead of played Assault?
Right, okay.
So, yeah. Very strong card. Offensive, defensive, boost. Just any way you use it will be good.
Yep,
basically.
And you will use it, and you'll probably use it on both sides using your character ability.
Yep.
Okay.
Moongyre, this one, I think I'm putting this a little higher than I think I would have in the past, but I was talking about, well, all your character cards give you a really premium boost when you hit with them. This is no exception. This is also the character card of yours that is 7 speed.
Yeah.
So you're going to hit with this. Like, just play it at range 2. If they're calling you out by, like, the way to beat DPs on offense, if you don't yourself have a DP and you don't want to boost in such a way that makes the DP useless, you play like Spike or you play a slow.
Yep.
This beats Spike, and I'm very happy if you play a slow into me and I Moongyre you. Because, like, okay, I traded down, I got this boost. There was a chance that I was just going to defend with Flash that strike. Like, you had to make a really hard read.
Right, you
and as a reward, you hit me for free damage.
Right.
Like, for free net delta.
Right. Okay. And you get a good boost in your gauge.
Yep, and you get a good boost in your gauge.
Okay.
This is a useful boost for you because it lets you break the speed curve. You're a season 6 character, so you tend not to have too much ways to do that.
Right.
But you can close 1. You can also do like funny stuff like a range 2 dive.
Because of trigger stacking. Right.
Yep, or a range 4 dive that doesn't get hit back.
Yep.
Don't do this, it's not worth it. You can play range 5, Flying Swallow. They play a slow. You say, okay, before close 1. After I have moved the strike, I don't want to close. I'm just going to stay at range 4 and not get hit.
Right.
Don't do that because you spent 2 cards and you didn't get any value out of it, and like you didn't gain advantage. You end your turn at range 4. It's not a great play, but it's there.
Right.
There could be a situation for it.
It is a funny play, and maybe someday it'll be valuable.
Yeah, I have done it. I'm just telling you, don't plan on doing it.
Right, don't plan on doing it. So the before close effect, you mentioned it's a way to break the speed curve. The relationship between range and speed is kind of fungible in Exceed. So like you're breaking the speed curve by being able to play a faster option from a farther range, basically, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's something interesting about that as well, actually. The range free mix-up. It has 3 cards people feel like are pretty strongly part of it.
Right.
There is a 3rd card in it.
Yeah.
On offense. On defense, everyone will agree, like, yeah, sweep on defense at range 3. On offense at range 3, sweep feels kind of funky, because if you play Spike, you beat the slows that sweep trade. You don't win cleanly if sweep on offense at range 3 almost ever.
Right.
So it's like I could have just swept on defense. There are some things going on with it, like maybe your opponent says, well, they're not playing sweep, I'll just play focus. Okay, you win for free. Or maybe your opponent says, haha, you struck into me at range 3, you've activated my trap card, EX Assault, and then you don't lose like you would have with any of these other cards.
Right. There's some upsides to it, but it's
It's niche.
yeah.
It's
Why not?
upsides, but niche.
Most of the time, why not just play it on defense?
Yeah.
Right.
So if you make sweep one speed faster, that doesn't really change anything I just said.
Right. But
If you make sweep one range further,
right, play it at range 4, and all of a sudden it's much scarier.
Yeah. So this is a really good boost for your range 4 mix-up, because now you have, okay, I'm hitting you at speed 5. Okay, I'm spiking you from range 4. I'm sweeping you from range 4. I'm diving and crossing you up, so I'm on curve mid-speed.
While still dodging everything. Okay, so it's this is a very good range 4 play then.
Yes.
Okay.
But, you know, other ways to use it as well. You can... this is a little niche, but like a elusive flash starting the turn at range 2 or starting the turn at range 3, like I think you're going to go faster. I think you're going to go slower.
Right.
You can range 2 dive. You can range 1 sweep. If you try to cross out, I'll still hit you.
Right.
It's flexible.
Yep. Okay.
And I'm putting your character card. This was mostly a discussion of your actual cards, but I really like this. I would. It's from left to right is like, how excited am I to have this card as Linne? I'm really excited to have this ability.
Have the ability, right? And this is just the exceed side because the character card's over here. So this is specifically okay, and it makes sense. Elusive Flash is even maybe more exciting than your ability.
It's less exciting, like I'm having fun because I can do this, and more exciting, I win because I can do this.
Right, and winning is exciting.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. Back to actual cards. Divine Blaze. This is a really good 3 gauge ultra for Linne. I think in a vacuum it might be somewhat worse because the turn after a strike text is very trivial for Linne to trigger. Is not as trivial for other people.
Right.
But as Linne, basically any strike that ends with you at range 2 or ends with you able to get to range 2, or they don't have grasps or they don't have focuses, like there are a lot of ways for this to be online and it to be a good card to strike with.
Yeah. I mean, on
it is expensive.
On curve 7 power is pretty good.
Yep, it also pushes, it gains advantage itself, so you can actually strike with this one without a boost if you want to.
Right, okay.
And that I will do a fair bit more than Assault, because I feel like Assault is kind of nice to camouflage. If I strike with this without a boost, I'm just pretty confident I won anyway.
Right. And you're happy to do that. So, but it is expensive. Season 6 characters gain a lot of gauge, but Linne might be using it pretty steadily.
Yep. When you play like an Elusive Flash, another thing that's great about Elusive Flash, you have some cards like you Veiled Off, you've struck with, I don't know, a normal that doesn't have a continuous boost on it. You can just spend a card from your gauge that isn't doing anything for your Exceed ability. When you play Divine Blaze, you probably don't have that luxury. You probably are going to have to give up continuous boosts that you'd love to play eventually.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you because that's, I mean, it's gauge. You are spending the gauge on the Ultra.
Yeah.
Right. But so with Elusive Flash, if you have you mentioned Veil Off, if you did block at some point, you wild swung a block or something, you can use that on Elusive Flash, but probably not on Divine Blaze.
Yeah, you still have to use two more cards, and probably some of them.
And at most one other one is going to be block, or else something's gone very wrong.
Possibly.
A third block in your gauge somehow.
Yep. So, yeah, very solid card. As you said, that's the downside to it. It is a little expensive. It's not as expensive as... It is very affordably priced. It's very aggressively priced, but 3 gauge is 3 gauge. You would rather not spend it.
Yep.
So, and also, this is big damage. You have funny things number 2, or whatever number we're on by now, about Linne. You have more damage than you would think, but you don't have that much. You don't have like drastically more damage than you would think looking at these low red numbers.
Right.
And this is the source of a higher red number, which is valuable.
Definitely. Yeah.
Next funnier thing about Linne, you have more armor than you'd expect as well, but just get to that later.
Right.
Yeah. So this card is good. This boost is kind of interesting, right? This is like definitely a valuable effect, but it's harder to quantify than others. Like you sweep them,
Right.
in addition to the like. It's a good boost to play. Like it and this boost are good ones to play when you don't have a particular effect you want, where it's like, okay, I just want advantage. Cool. I'll have a little extra power. I'll have a little extra discard.
Right, sure. It's not necessarily and you mentioned one use case where you might be trying to play Divine Blaze in the first place is that you're veiling off and or rather
Get one strike, flip back.
you're reverting for the extra gauge and then you play this so it's in your gauge. Um you know, you find a way to exceed later and it's
Yeah, no, it's
yeah, now it's coming out of your gauge again, but that's kind of complicated. Is this a situation where you might just play this boost raw, or do you really want to hit with Divine Blaze?
you have to be flexible as Linne. I would rather hit with the Divine Blaze, but that useful cards in hand puzzle is ever present.
Okay.
So do what you have to do.
Okay, so you might, and as you mentioned, like if all you really want is advantage, and you're like, well, cool, I get a command grab discard effect out of it too, I'll take it.
Yep.
And
Yeah, it's
that
just it's like you want advantage on every strike. Sometimes you want a transformative effect on your strike.
okay.
Other times you just like, okay, I'll take advantage in value. Sure.
That's a good way to look at it. And different boosts are giving you different value, but only some of them are really changing the interactions.
Yep.
Okay.
So those are like your three best cards. You pay for this one. You don't really pay for these two as much as they are worth.
Right.
And here are your. This is kind of the big blob of these are normals you particularly like, and the rest of your specials.
Yep.
Which I will value roughly equally. Again, hot take alert. Skyfangs. Since we started with it already, I'll just finish with it.
Sure.
It's yeah, again, matchup dependent, but like the way it works makes it beat a lot of categories of fireballs if they don't beat like it beats all fast fireballs that don't stun it.
Yep.
It loses to probably all mid-speed fireballs. Though, like, I guess some mid-speed fireballs are speed-free, in which case it just beats those two.
Yep.
And it beats all slow fireballs at ranges close enough for you to advance to range 1
Right.
or into their minimum range.
And that's specifically on defense. On offense, you're actually on a lot of fireballs. You might actually just be able to trade up. Or rather,
yeah, that would be good for
it
against mid-speed fireballs.
Right.
Is you can play this on offense into like Ken's Hadouken.
Right.
But I don't like playing this on offense very much because it's free damage. The cards you are already playing on defense at range 4 against Linne beat this because you're playing to beat Flying Swallow and Dive, and Flying Swallow and Dive do more damage than this does.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, this is mostly a defense card, but yeah, you can play it on offense. There is a funny line. You boost this, and you play this on offense at range 5. And against some characters, they cannot trade with that. Against some characters, this is just if you get hit by this, you're being stunned.
Just win the strike for free, pretty much.
That's the reason why I'm going to recommend against this play. If you hit is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Right.
There are a lot of characters with even ones that can't actually trade with this in any way can just like cross out, get out of the way, and then you've spent a lot of resources to do not that much.
Right.
But it's an option. It's there.
And it's also pretty transparently face up. There isn't anything else.
Yes, it is completely face up. That's the other flaw with it.
Yeah,
there's nothing else that could be.
You don't have any other range 5 plays.
Yeah, the other range 5 play you have is printed on the boost you used and is even more telegraphed. But that one doesn't matter if it's telegraphed.
Right.
Whereas this one kind of does.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
So yeah, this card it's better than people think, and it's got a good boost on it, and you like both sides of it. Yep.
Okay.
Tenacious Mist. This is again pretty soft range 1 mid speed, but just having a range 1 mid speed is it gives you options that you don't automatically have as a character.
Yeah.
This does, like we said, scale with boost well. If you are striking with your exceed ability often enough, you can choose to never strike with this card when it's not dealing at least 5 damage. It's not a hard choice to make if you want to make it.
Right.
And then when this card is dealing 5 damage, this is again, like you trade quote unquote with sweep and focus. It does matter because like they get their extra effects. They get a
They get
gauge.
gauge, right? But you're trading dramatically up.
Yes.
Okay.
Um. So yeah. Um. So yeah. Useful card. This boost is kind of funky. This boost is another. This one looks like it should be one of those transformative boosts, and sometimes it is, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna play Divine Blaze at range 1, and now I don't have to worry about Grasp, or now I don't have to worry about Focus, or if
Right.
this is from Gauge, now I don't have to worry about either, and
Right.
that's cool. But a lot of the times, you don't. A lot of times, there's not a single normal that you don't want to get hit by in a strike.
Right.
Like here's a thing that you would love to be able to do, which doesn't work, is if you could boost us at range 3 and name Cross, you can be like, we're going to trade the strike.
Oh,
Like you're
it's
going to interact with me, but it doesn't say that. They can just cross out. It
name a normal, then strike. The opponent cannot play that card.
would be
Versus, yeah, name a normal, then strike. The named card cannot hit you. Right. Okay. So it requires some pretty specific, like detailed knowledge of your opponent's kit and what they're actually threatening.
It's just normals.
No, right, but like if you are saying like, aha, you can't hit me with grasp, and then they're like, cool, my other fast range 1 option that I have.
Yes, that's the other problem. Yeah, it's just like there are situations where this is very funny. Again, like the range 1 Divine Blaze, that's great. You can just say like, okay, I'm going to play an on-curve. I'm going to play something that doesn't beat a slow. But slows are, I think, one of the rarer cards to be character cards. So you can say, okay, well, I'm going to reduce, like, have you drawn the right one of focus and sweep instead of just have you drawn focus or sweep to trade with my.
Sure.
Yeah.
Other than that, it is still a hit gain advantage and hit +1 power boost most of the time, and that's
So
that's
this
funny.
looks like a transformative boost. It's just a value boost, and that's fine.
Okay.
This card. This is range 4 dive, notably not range 3 dive. Like it works at range 3, but it doesn't have any of the properties dive has at range 3. You still just trade. It's not a good range 3 card.
Right. Okay.
This card values having, like, again, this resistance on it. This card tends to really like the little bit of effective guard. You can just throw it on offense at range 4, and I think that's often worthwhile. Like it's not great necessarily to turn 1 dive because your opponent will just play slow. You will trade down in value and life.
Right.
This card changes that math like a little bit because you get, unlike turn 1 dive and now I don't have tech, turn 1 dive now I don't have reading. This is turn 1 dive now I do have a boost that is better than I had before.
Oh, sure, because it's going to gauge and you don't have to decide for that. But for dive, you do. You actually are. You can't play reading from gauge.
Yeah, like if you have this card in hand and dive and you're at range 4, you would always strike with this card instead of dive. Well, okay.
Right.
The boost matters. If you're going to strike at range 4 with a card, it might as well be this one.
Right. Because you're getting this into your gauge, and advance retreat 1 then strike is awesome. Are you ever playing this at range 1 for the draw and advance effect?
You are, and sometimes you will do it as just like a super risky mid speed. Other times you'll do it with like resistance on it,
right?
To be a little less risky. There's lots of like little interesting things about this. Like you can also, I just said don't strike with it at range 3. Well, if you boost resistance and strike with it at range 3, maybe they assault in, they hit you for a 3 after your armor. You're not stunned. You steal advantage back.
Right.
Like lots of little things that this. Lots of little incremental value, like specific situations where this card does things. And then just at range 1, it's an okay mid speed. Like it's a thing your opponent has to guess about if they're going to defend at range 1. Because like you don't want to defend it with sweep against someone with +1 power on every strike. So you often want to defend with focus, but this is real. You do have to consider this exists.
Right, and I mean, just like what you said with Tenacious Mist, having a
range 1 mid-speed,
yeah, having 2 range 1 mid-speeds, even if they cover different options, is still something the opponent has to think about. And then the boost on this, so this is very different than the foreclose 1 effect. This is now movement. It's not in strike movement.
This one doesn't let you break the speed curve at all, like you're saying.
This is basically another copy of Mix Up with some differences in gaining advantage and
Yeah, notably better for a lot of reasons. It's
Yeah,
advanced instead of
advanced
close. It
instead of
has your
close.
UA
Yep.
applied to it.
Yep.
It doesn't cost you spike, which like it's nice having spike because you don't like it's mid speeds are
Right.
helpful.
Sure.
But yeah, the mix up would actually be quite a good boost for you if it's a gain advantage on it, because
Yeah.
you want to little small adjustments that let you strike afterwards are really helpful for solving your how do I turn this hand into effective aggression question.
Right. Right.
So yeah, good
Okay.
boost. That's good for different reasons than this one, as you're pointing out.
Right. Yeah. This one, combos with specific cards to make them better in various ways. This is more like you get into range to play the card you want to play.
Yep,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
So these are all, again, you strike with them. If you had even stronger cards, you wouldn't complain, but you're completely happy to strike with them and get a gauge.
Yep.
And get a specific gauge.
Right.
And here are the normals you like. We talked about focus. We've pretty much said everything I wanted to say about focus already, just over the course of this.
Plus one power on focus is sorry, that was sweep that I was talking about. Veil off probably better than focus, but use focus too. It is a good card.
Yep.
Okay.
And like once you have veiled off, if you just are going to stay exceeded, which you like, that's my ideal. I will flip back if I need the gauge really badly to play an ultra, but ideally I'll just stay exceeded the entire rest of the game. So out of your 4 opportunities to play focus in a game, 3 of them can be focus even if you veil off.
Right.
Linne games do not usually go to drawing all 4 of your focuses, but they could.
They could.
I would spend it for my gauge pretty highly, because I want to draw it again on my second shuffle.
Is the aggressiveness that Linne embodies that extends to her economy as well? She's burning through cards like crazy, so she's going to be reshuffling for sure.
Hard to say. Not for sure, just because like if you have a good game, you can just sweep, spike,
you can
divine
just
blaze,
kill them.
But
yeah,
your damage numbers aren't as high. They're not like you're not going to automatically kill them on the front side.
I mean, the comparison I was about to make was to Sea Viper, because you are spending 2 cards at once, but you're actually not, because you're spending one from gauge and you've already sort of spent that card. So you kind of have like you're double dipping on your economy a little bit. Okay.
Exactly. And unlike Sea Viper, you have your front side action and you have prep. You don't have like a draw a bunch of cards action, which I think Viper has at least one of.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
She's got stylish. She's got a couple of ways to get a whole bunch
and
of cards.
Her exceed side, yeah. You do have to actually draw all the cards you're going to use. You can take big change cards actions. You have extra ultras.
Yep.
But yeah, your economy is slower than Sea Viper's for sure.
Yep. Sorry. Continue with normals chat.
Yep. Sweep with +1 power, amazing card. Sweep that gains advantage, amazing card. Sweep with both of those effects, amazing card.
Yep, sure. And just defense you mentioned as being surprisingly good, and I assume it's pretty good on the same things that this is good on.
Yeah, pretty much. It's also it is good on the same things that's good on. You do have to be aware of what breakpoints matter in any given strike, but those are there. This is one of your get out of light options. Because those are valuable for you. As we were talking about with Way of the Warrior earlier, like what do you do if the opponent just plops down a good boost on the board? That makes it hard to strike. This can make it possible to strike when it didn't look like it was.
Right.
Like you're at range 2 and there is a light in play. You can just defend cross or something. Like you're not going to lose to spike because you're still faster, and if the things you are going to lose to aren't going to hurt you very much.
Right. That makes sense. And then you're getting superior into your gauge.
Yeah, assuming you hit, which you might.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, that's the other reason. Yeah, like, good. Thank you for asking that, because I forgot to mention. Among the reasons Just Defend is better for Lenny than it is for other characters, it does solve some problems for you.
Okay.
Cross. So the downside of Cross. 3 damage at range 6, 3 not interaction at range, or 3 damage at range 2 on your turn, 3 I don't want to interact with you on range 3 on the opponent's turn. Like, there are a lot of good things about Cross, but some people think this is the best normal. I am not one of them. because there are also some downsides about cross. You're only dealing 3 damage. You're going to a long range that your character, like if you're most characters in the game, you probably don't like that much.
Right.
And then like a counter argument to that is okay, but you go to a long range, so you can just like disengage and prep for a while. Linne disengaging when you at the wrong time is not good for you because your opponent can get more value over time than you can sometimes.
Okay.
Stapling advantage onto this card solves like most of those problems. You went to range 5. Okay, well I'm just here. I am before close 1, flying swallow, right back in.
Yep. Sure.
And then it puts superior in your gauge, which is excellent for you. You want the damage. You looking at your cards, you don't win games by just taking a bunch of damage trades.
Right.
You do need to win some strikes.
We need to win clean occasionally. It's a good thing you have elusive flash.
Yes.
Right.
So given that most of the downsides of cross don't apply to you, and you get to play it and superior instead of making the hard choice, just mash cross, get your free damage, get your good boost, have a plan for your way back in.
Right.
But you can do that.
Right.
So.
Sure. You mentioned earlier when I asked about because of the sort of like slightly fragile defenses on Skyfang, if it was a good place to use superior, you mentioned having better places to use it. What are some of those better places?
Okay, that's a good question. Elusive flash in offense no longer loses to assault.
Okay.
This is just cross out or die.
Yep.
Tenacious Mist. They do have to give you this turn, but okay, this is 6 power because you're going to boost something else. It has guard armor. You will not take damage from anything slower than it.
Yeah.
And if you get hit by something faster than it, then okay, you took like 2 damage.
Right.
And then the real exciting one is something I'm going to put a pin in again. But also normals, just superior sweep, superior assault.
All the things that EX attacks are always good with anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Here's block. Block gets you out of awkward hand situations. It's like sometimes you don't strike with block, but you're like, okay, if my opponent strikes into me, well, I'll have room in my hand for cards that I want more than these. Because I'll block their strike and spend the force that I don't need.
Right.
And tech hit.
Yeah.
Tech hit is, we had a whole discussion about tech hit.
Yeah, it's your diffusal option.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, onto here are cards are exciting, but not as exciting as the last set.
Right.
You have Grasp. This is, Grasp that gains advantage is cooler than normal Grasp because it gets you, assuming they don't focus you, it gets you the position you want on your turn.
Yep.
You get Respect into Gauge. It covers your mid speeds that you have a few of. You do need to play this card, but you like striking. Grasp likes being used on defense. So you're not that excited to just play a Grasp, but you have to, and it's there for you.
Yep.
And this is a very strong Ultra that your opponent, by playing the game correctly, can deny you the ability to use, but by doing so, they are denying themselves value as well. So the threat of this Ultra is important.
Right. So without your opponent actively helping you, you are likely to only have one extra range on this, correct? Because it's gonna come from a
you're gonna play any boost. This is going to be an on curve range 4 card. That's cool.
Okay.
Back to our pin and superior.
I was gonna ask. Yeah.
This is your superior card. You play superior on an empty board. Your opponent has to ask, "What am I doing about Diviner next turn?"
Okay.
And the answer to that is there aren't good easy answers to that. There's tech superior. There's strike into superior.
Yeah. So it's that's a speed 5.
That's
4/7 damage for 2 gauge.
Better because you're going to put a boost on it. It's speed 6, range 5.
Yep. Probably +1 power, +2 power from the superior. Another one from the.
And then if your opponent, your opponent does the okay, I'm playing Exceed. My opponent's done some set play. I'm going to set play back. Even more speed and range.
Right. So don't do that. So I have to ask then, why is this card all the way over here? Because everything that you just said sounds incredible.
Because sometimes you don't get to play superior, and on a turn that you can play diviner.
You're telling
sometimes
me You're telling me that I have to consider like reality when we're theory crafting our cards here, Rose? I don't
Yeah,
know about this.
this is the okay. The other half. This is a really situational boost. -1
Okay.
speed, ignore guard is really hard to use. There's some
Okay.
funny stuff that, especially now set 7 came out, just walk up to Axel and ignoring guard grasp him, and he can't beat it.
You can't stop. Yep.
Uh, but this is a really hard boost to use.
Okay.
The best way to use it is like an EX grasp, probably. And like natural EX, because if you have Superior in play, why not just play Diviner?
Right.
So this is the card as Linne that gets stuck in your hand.
Okay. So it might be, and it doesn't have a great force. Doesn't, or rather, doesn't have a great boost on it. So is this something that you might be just change cards with sometimes?
Yeah, this is the problem Linne has. You have these amazing ultras. This one in particular, and Divine Blaze as well, just because it's expensive, get stuck in your hand, and you want to use them. You change cards, draw some cards, draw some stuff you can play.
Okay. Makes sense.
This one also gets stuck in your gauge, but that's like you can't gauge boost this. Probably you again really need that situation.
Right. So that you might just be CCing from gauge then.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah,
makes sense.
But, force is good. The option to just play a I win card is real.
On
the attack side, yes.
Right, and in certain situations, yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess I put this here like this is how often I'm like excited to use this, like or rather like this is a strong ability. I'm happy to have it. I think you probably want to use it like maybe once or twice a game.
Okay.
And like you were very happy about having done that. But it just doesn't.
Probably not more than that because you're going to be spending as much time as you can on your exceed side.
Yep.
Okay.
And here's the range pre-mix up. Linne's they're normals, so I'm not going to talk too much about the attacks themselves. Yeah. The thing that's going reason they are down here because Linne is a very aggressive character, and range tree mix-up is a good aggressive thing to do.
Right.
So why are they down here and not higher? You can't really make the range tree mix-up better as Linne than it already is. You can't put speed on it. You can't like staple advantage to it because that's just like telegraphs you aren't playing assault.
Right.
Or you could staple advantage to it and play assault, but then you just wasted a boost.
And
so they're there for you.
The thing you mentioned as being particularly useful as part of the range 3 mix-up is actually just making it the range 4 mix-up instead.
Yep. Which is super cool. That's helpful for these cards.
That does benefit those cards, but it also benefits quite a few other cards.
Yep. And then like this is like one of the things that Spike is good at is it's the range 2 mid speed. Like range 3 actually is a little riskier for Spike than range 2.
Yeah.
You have the like amazing range 2 options that you don't need to Spike at range 2 a lot of the time.
Right.
And this one too. Just like play these.
I mean, making your opponent afraid to play slow at range 2 does not seem to be a problem when you're talking about either breaking it or crossing out or dodging it.
Yep.
Okay.
So, hot take, notably, reading is down here. I don't know. Reading's cool.
But you're probably not going to be gaining advantage while you do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is mobility. Mobility is nice. These are normals, useful normals. This would be a card that you would really like if it gained you advantage, but it doesn't.
Yep.
You'll use it, but yeah.
So, yeah, and this does gain you advantage, but it's hard to make use of that advantage. Otherwise, it's just an on curve 4 damage at range 3.
Yep. The nice thing about this card is you use these 2 cards and you use this card because then you do gain advantage.
Right.
So, yeah. Just nothing Linne specific is going on in the pile. This is the pile of unmodified normals.
Right, and those might be good normals, but they're not good because they're in Linne's kit in particular.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
that's the kit.
Mm-hmm. And the strategy too, really. Like we've been talking about the kit in the context of how we're going to play Linne. That is kind of everything I have prepared about Linne herself. I know you like to ask counterplay and counterplay and similar characters, so I am ready to answer those. But
definitely.
Any other questions as well? Now is the time.
Before we get to that, I think I've got an idea of like what attacks I'm playing and when and how to boost and things like that. The other thing I had a question about is a little bit more about her economy, because I'm putting stuff in gauge. It has to be the right stuff, or preferably it's the right stuff. Um, I'm taking things out of gauge. I have, it sounds like, decent card draw, but I don't really want to be putting myself in a position where I can use it because I'm giving up my exceed side to do it.
Yep.
So it, like, her gauge economy is stable, and she's a season 6 character, so she's generating quite a bit of it. How realistic is it to have enough gauge to um play Divine Blaze and also consistently use her ability, for example? Like what like gauge threshold is actually reasonable to expect Linne generates over the course of a game? Is it 6? Is it 10? I have no idea.
Uh, yeah, that's going to depend on a lot. It's on the higher end for sure.
Okay.
Because you like striking with. That's where we get back to Linne has quite a bit of armor. Actually, you
Okay.
have Tenacious Mist, you have Sky Fangs, uh, you have the boost. Just Defend is actually in your deck.
Right.
You
Instead of being
have
sweep.
yes. You probably are blocking because some of the time because you have an awkward hand and block will help you.
Yep.
Um, you have resistance. You have as well as armor. You have a lot of ways to just not get hit.
Yeah.
So you kind of tend to hit a lot for fairly low or middling power, and then not get hit back for very much either.
So
If at all.
there's going to be, so she generates a lot of gauge, but also Linne games involve more interactions, so maybe both players are going to be a little bit gauge, like higher on gauge than they would be in another game. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Aggression also definitely like you are going to trade, and you're pretty happy about trading because, in my judgment, Linne can get more bursts of value out of gauge. Like you give Ryu 4 gauge and you eat a Metsu Shoryu or whatever. That is what Linne. That's what Ryu has spent his gauge on that game, and now you're back to Ryu doesn't have gauge.
Right.
You just keep spending your gauge constantly.
Okay. So
Um,
so you don't necessarily have to make really, really hard choices between um ultra saving for ultras and using her character ability. You'll have enough for both. It's more, do you have enough for both
yes
at the
and no.
time? Okay.
Yes, you're not agonizing like I'm looking at this ultra in my hand turn 1. Do I plan to play it this game? You
Right.
are constantly adjusting. Like, okay, this is what my hand looks like right now. Am I playing this ultra right now, or am I going to hope for a future opportunity to play it and throw it away for
Right.
now?
And if Divine Blaze is in my hand and I have the ability to revert, let's do it and go for it. But I don't
Yeah,
need to I don't need to make that judgment call turn 1 when I decide that I'm not going to veil off and instead I'm going to play focus. Like, that's not going to derail my whole plan.
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Gotcha.
And then you were also talking about just like you don't have that much ability to draw cards. You
Yeah.
don't. You gain advantage, which advantage in the worst case says draw 2 cards.
Right.
But you'd like to use it to chain attacks together, but like that is expensive on your hand and gauge.
Right.
You're going to have periods of like build up and periods of strikes in a succession. You can also just like, oh, I'm going to strike once and gain advantage and then prep. Like that's fine.
Right.
But it's nice to be able to chain strikes together because that's part of the value of advantage is doing something unreactable to the opponent.
Right.
So yeah, you'll be prepping a lot. Ideally, you force your opponent to prep a lot as well by making them use up resources to hold off your aggression, and then both of you prep a couple of times,
So that
and then you start doing aggressive stuff.
you're not being punished for your prep.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
if you have to prep when your opponent's hand is full and they're going to start putting down scary boosts, that's a bad situation for you.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's
So drain them by striking first, and then prep back up while they have to prep back up.
Yep.
Okay.
And that is another gauge thing. Your gauge is serving a lot of purposes. You might have to CC gauge just because CC is strong action, and the bigger of a CC you take, the better usually.
Yeah. The more compression you're getting out of it, the more tempo.
Yep.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. Yeah, that was my only question about economy. It makes sense. Cool. Yeah, and then you had stuff that you wanted to say about counterplay.
Yep. Counterplay.
Yeah.
Biggest piece of counterplay. Don't card lock. I don't know. Have you come across that term before? It comes from BattleCon, so it's a little.
I have not. Tell me what card lock means.
So very brief tangent. In BattleCon, the way the game worked is you have a rotating set of cards. Like your discard is known, and it is based on the card you have played within the last 2 turns.
Okay.
So in BattleCon, someone can look at your hand and your discard and say, "Okay, you are locked out of this option. You are in card lock."
Okay.
In Exceed, it's more like this is just a deck game with more normal deck rules. But I can say, okay, looking at your discard, both your grasps are down. You are card locked out of speed 7 options.
I see. Okay.
Don't get card locked because if you run out of, I don't know, you run out of slows against who's someone really against Fight, okay? You run out of slows against Fight. Fight has no action compression at all except exceeding.
Right.
The worst Fight can do to you, it will hurt a lot, by the way, because he's Fight. He will assault you twice and then play something else.
Yeah.
And he will have dealt like 20 damage doing that because he's Fight, but don't worry about that.
Right.
If you run out of slows against Linne and she has enough cards in hand engaged, the game's over. She can just strike on curve every turn for the rest of the game, gain advantage, and you're
just
dead.
keep advantage chaining, right?
So don't get card locked in a way that she can abuse.
Right.
If you are out of slows or out of fast, you need to reshuffle, like now.
Okay.
And abuse her card lock. Like that is the thing about aggression and Exceed or spending cards. It gets more and more obvious what you're striking with. As the initiator, you suffer more from that because they get to respond.
Right.
Well, as the initiator, you also get to like strike with stuff they can't respond to. So, right, double-edged sword.
Right.
But yeah, if she's predictable, you can just win strikes. And if you're winning strikes, everything we said about Linne goes out the window if she's losing strikes for free. You're not getting engaged, you're not getting advantage, you are miserable.
Right.
So don't get card locked, abuse her card lock. That thing we were just talking about, it's really good to reload when the opponent also has to reload. 2 sides to this. If your hand is not empty when she needs to reload, that's a period of strength for you, and you can do things.
Yeah.
If your hand is empty when she doesn't need to reload, you're in real trouble, because now she's going to hit you, and you're going to be wild swinging the whole time.
Right.
So, try to maintain your hand size as much as you can, because any turn that you are setting up to stop Linne from hitting you is going to pay a bit off for you. Same thing as the card lock. Read her. She gets predictable. She can get some cards stuck in hand. Like if she's been striking for 5 turns in a row and she doesn't have that many cards in her deck and blocks aren't in the discard and she has cards in her hand, they're in her hand.
Right.
Read her.
So when you say read her, you don't mean read her intentions. You mean play the reading boost.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can read her intentions, please do, because you will. She has to play mix-ups to win the game. So
do that as well. Yeah, but that's a separate bullet point on the counterplay list. Is read her mind, but play the reading boost if you have it in your kit.
Yeah, you don't need to go for Hail Mary readings. You can. Linne makes herself pretty vulnerable to reading, just because, like, again, if she's doing this thing where she like strikes 5 times and then preps 3 times and strikes 5 times. If you read her on the 3rd turn she preps, 6 cards have entered her hand and she hasn't filtered them at all.
Right.
Yeah. Set play, like we were saying with Ryu again, like just put down your Metsu, your Way of the Warrior, and make her have the tech hit. If she doesn't have the tech hit, she's going to have to do something much harder to get out of that situation.
Or just have to eat the damage.
Yep. But don't lose to Diviner. Don't start boosting a bunch of power when your speed isn't very high, because you'll just win the strike.
Okay. Any particular like parry targets? I assume just things that are farther this way. You parry them.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd bother parrying Moongyre just because that's kind of a waste of time. Like, it's good, but it's good because she just gets value out of it no matter what you do. And I think spending your time parrying it is a thing she gets value out of.
Oh, that's fair. But Elusive Flash is powerful enough that you need to address it.
Yeah, parry Elusive Flash. Also, I'm trying to think, do you want to block her? Like, normally I'd say no, because characters gain advantage that, like, you blocked, now you're in the same situation.
Right.
But, like, she does have to actually kill you, and like she doesn't have any ignore armor.
Right. She's got to chew through your life, and if you are giving yourself more effective life, that might be harder. But if you are if you've made the read that your character really, really benefits from not having to deal with elusive flash, or maybe not having to deal with one of her other scary ultras or something, then maybe
Yeah,
parry is a better call.
I think it's pretty just what does your character care about more
Right.
than like Elusive Flash, again, very scary card. Like it seems like a pretty safe card to parry, but maybe you're Vega, and at that point, like, I don't know.
Right.
Just parry cards that seem good at the time. Parry focus and sweep. Parry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the same thing about like if Linne is losing strikes that she's initiating and she's losing them cleanly, she's not very happy because she's investing more into each strike than most characters. She's putting a boost down as well as the actual card she's striking with.
Right.
So plan to beat things that you know she's going to want to do. Like it's always like there's always a trade-off, right? I could, if I know my opponent doesn't have, if I know my opponent's Linne and they want to Divine Blaze me, I could just hold 2 crosses all game, and the turn that they go for the Divine Blaze, haha, I've got my speed 7 cross out and win the streak, and that's crushing. But the cost of that is you haven't crossed out of Linne, and crossing out of Linne is pretty good against her because, like we just said, she's investing more in her strikes.
Right. You're putting all of that into one crushing victory rather than spreading the value over the game, but you're getting kind of the same value out of it.
Yeah, so it's like choose. Yeah, either. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Cross is strong. Cross, that is probably its own separate bullet point. Don't let Linne hit you. If you can, even if you take a trade that neither of you hit, she wasted more resources than you did, probably. So that's cool. But separately, yeah, like if it doesn't ruin your game plan in other ways, plan to beat things you know she's going to want to do. Like maybe you have a speed 4 assault, like I guess, and you can bait her into elusive flashing because you've used up your assaults and just play the EX. Win a strike she's not expecting you to win, and that derails her.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the counterplay. Don't get predictable. You same thing. If you're throwing a bunch of mix-ups that they know what you're doing and they can find a way to beat cleanly, you'll be sad.
Yep.
This is less counterplay and more like this is where your skill expression as Linne is headed towards. Figure out how to get out of set play and deck order problems, because that's what holds you back, is like your opponent has set down defenses and you don't have a way to deal with them, or you have a bunch of cards in your hand that you don't want.
Okay, so
the better you get it out, the better you,
get better at playing the hand minigame, learn how to use your, find ways to diffuse boosts that don't involve tech hit so you have tech hit for later, stuff like that.
Yep, and then this one's pretty high level, like lose strikes in a way that even if you're going to lose the strike, you're advancing your game plan. Like, here's a really simple example, like Elusive Flash, we keep talking about, if they don't have Assault, this is a free card. If they do have Assault, it's technically a risk, but like, defending at range 2 with Assault is also pretty scary, so even then it's strong.
Right.
But like, alright, I'll play to lose. If I'm going to lose to something, it'll be Assault, and then you have 1 fewer Assault to beat Elusive Flash later, is an example.
So you're holding Elusive Flash for later, and you're running your opponent, you're kind of rope-a-doping them. You're running your opponent out of the option.
If you're going to lose to something, at least I'll lose to the thing that you'll be the saddest to not have in the future.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And that seems like it's valuable advice across kind of any character, but with Linne in particular, who has these cards that sort of only lose to one thing, make them get rid of that one thing.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that particular to Linne, but that's just like, that's counterplay in a nutshell in my mind, is like, your opponent, even when you lose, try to make the loss not hurt.
Right.
Like, your opponent is doing stuff to make you lose.
Yeah.
Make them have to do the most expensive option each time.
Cultivate a positive attitude.
So, yeah, that's that. And similar characters.
Yeah, tell me about if anybody else is, if we've got Linne as kind of our dedicated main and we're looking to branch out, who are you looking to branch out into?
So this is kind of an archetype. This is the advantage crew. You've got your Noels, your Reeses, your Jin, who has a bunch of advantage boosts, your Gordeau, who has a bunch of advantage on cards.
Yep.
Your Lychee, who has advantage in her mechanic.
Yep.
Anji and Kai have a bunch of advantage printed on their cards. Just Linne does more advantage than probably, again, maybe more than anyone else.
Right.
Maybe not more than like Reese or something, but
if your comfort zone is in taking a lot of turns in a row unreactably, you can find that elsewhere too.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I'll make my. I think this is my last hot take of the guide. Where did he go? Oh, never mind. Last hot take of the guide, we have Gold Lewis, the season 7 Linne.
They look so similar.
Yeah.
I can't.
Gold
I
Lewis,
can't
high
imagine.
power character, has very little advantage in his kit. Um, just, but he does exceed almost every game. And to succeed, it says gain advantage in prep when you hit.
Okay. All right.
He also has Skyfangs in his really good range 4 defensive card. It's like better than Skyfangs, but I'm going to call it Skyfangs because I find it funny.
Okay.
Um,
So full disclosure, I haven't had the Gold Lewis lesson yet from Andero. So I don't actually know if you're right when you say that Linne is like Gold Lewis, but I have to assume that you are because you're the
act-
expert here, and it's way funnier to assume that you are correct about this. So I'm gonna take you at your word on this one.
yeah. What Goldus wants to do is Goldus wants to, in my opinion, exceed and then start throwing mix-ups at you. And if he wins the mix-up, he gets advantage in the sense that he drew a bunch of cards and possibly made you discard a bunch of cards, and then does it again, and does it again, and does it again. That's one of
Okay.
the baseline level way to play Goldus. I think there's a lot of depth to him,
Okay.
but
I will have to wait, let's say like 4 months to find out if you're right, but I'll be sure to let you know if I agree with you whether Gold Lewis and Linne play the same. I take your word for it.
it's it's a bit more of a stretch, but it's there. That's
I
my hot take.
I'll take it. I like the idea.
Okay. Also, just season 7 in general, a little bit like squint at her boost kit, her character ability, play a continuous boost from your gauge that makes you strike, and then strike.
That's kind of cancel-y. You're right.
Yep, and your boosts are all kind of like cancels have lower impact than like big slow
Slightly,
boosts.
yeah, slightly lower power boosts that have action compression. Yeah, I can see that.
So and also use cancels to kind of customize your strike a little bit. Cancels are a lot less tightly constrained. If you have the resources to spend them, then you get one boost and one attack.
Okay.
But the more you cancel, the less efficient your strike is getting. So like if you can get away with one boost and one attack and win, that's great.
Right. So Linne baseline plays like a well played season 7 character.
Possibly. I mean, again, there's lots of depth for player
yeah,
expression rate and how you choose to play. It's
of course
you can play season 7 like Linne in some ways.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And then also other characters like craft strikes, like particularly notably like Jacko and Viper craft strikes. You boost a card and then strike.
Sure.
Then she's a season 6 character. Those have some similarities. They have cheap gauge. They have cheap movement. They have like this flip effect. Hers is a little unique because like hers plays a lot of them are things that modify your strike is what I want to say. I'm not 100% confident. Like a lot of them at least are things that modify your strike, and hers does do that, but like in a slightly different way because it does it through the avenue of a continuous boost.
Yeah.
And then of the season 6 characters, there's another season 6 character who is kind of a still aggressive because season 6 is an aggressive season, but a much more set play slow character than her. You asked about this character's name, and then I decided to later, unrelatedly, put this in the guide.
It is pronounced Wagner, apparently.
Yes, because they used the wrong character in the game.
Sure.
So it's English W instead of German W. This is the other gauge booster in season 6.
Okay.
She, unlike Linne, the way I play Wagner, I spend a lot more time on front side than back side. But if you like oh, I can just hit with cross and then play superior, she has that. And I think very few other, possibly no other characters in the game. Okay, no. Very few other characters in the game have that dynamic going on.
Can play boost from gauge like that.
Yep.
Great.
Linne is a Shoto. She's a weird one. Like she is very into this aggression advantage combo game plan.
Right.
But she just Shoto movement. She has the DP. She has the, in her case, quite bad bad at being an aggressive tool projectile.
Right.
So yeah, I'll say Tenacious Mist is a kick. That's also kind of spicy, I guess. The thing about kicks, this is why this is spicy. Kicks are range 1 to 2 cards. At range 2, they usually beat sweep. Um, what's particularly notable at kicks is like they are mid speeds that scale really well with boosts. They
With
might not
boosts,
win
right?
cleanly on their own.
Right.
Like if you just play a raw axe kick, you are wasting the potential of axe kick because you trade with both sweep and focus.
Right.
If you play a boosted axe kick, you win for free.
Right.
Um, Tenacious Mist is that type of Shoto mid speed where like
Yeah.
you need some boost investment in it. The way Linne does it is different because again she's kind of a weird Shoto, but
Right.
she has a Shoto toolkit.
Okay.
She has to, yeah. And then fast-paced aggression characters. This is where you found my type when you're like, oh, you play Dan also, as well as the hand mechanics thing. Dan, Hazama, Gordeau, May, probably. Like these other characters that just want to hit you.
All right. Anybody else whose name we can't pronounce in particular that you want to shout out?
Oh no.
Are there any other characters that we don't know how to say the name of?
I'm looking at season 2 because it would have to be there, right?
Actually,
Oh,
legitimately.
Iaquis?
Yeah.
I do not know. That's what I say.
Iaquis, who knows? But
Iaquis is a good one too.
By virtue of them having a name that we don't know how to pronounce, they are also like Linne.
He's a fun character. Yeah, if you like Linne, there's no similarity to Iaquis, but it means you have good taste, so you'll like him too.
There you go. Perfect. All right, cool. All right. I don't know, Rose. I think that was pretty good. I think we've got a lesson out of that. Is there anything else you want to mention as part of the guide, or should we sign off?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, in that case, thank you so much for your time and expertise. As always, it was great talking to you. I'm completely sold on Linne. I can't wait to try her out.
Yep. Thanks again for this opportunity. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. As always, you're the one doing me the favor. And to everybody watching, thank you so much for your time and your attention. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it too. And I will see you all later. Bye, everybody.
Take care.